Right, good evening everybody. We'll make a little start then. Welcome to the June SUFON meeting. Now, as you know, every 6 months or so we regularly update you with the latest sightings that have occurred in the South Wales area. And incidentally, there have been quite a lot of them recently. However, tonight we're able to turn our attention to the North Wales area, and this is because we have the pleasure of the company of Mr. Rowe. Now, although Gary was born, I think, in Stoke-on-Trent, he's lived in North Wales for many, many years and currently resides in Rhyl. He's been interested in the UFO phenomena since his teenage years, and since then he's been actively investigating UFO sightings in the area for many decades, including the Llanilar case, which I spoke to you about a few years ago, on which no doubt you'll have something to say tonight as well. He's been a member of and run and founded various UFO groups and given many talks on the subject over the years, and is extremely knowledgeable on the subject. So tonight he'll be taking us through many of his most notable North Wales UFO investigations. So I'm not going to talk any longer. Please give a warm SUFON welcome to Mr. Rowe.
Thank you very much for that. That's a brilliant welcome. Now, I must warn you, I don't know which of you is going to fall asleep first, you or me. Only I've been on the road from 8 o'clock this morning until 4 o'clock this afternoon because there's been a major accident somewhere, and every road's got diversions and police cars. I've never seen so much in all my life. Oh my God, well. Right, okay then. Well, when you elect me as the new Prime Minister, oh, hang on. Oh, that's, there we go. Okay. I am 77 years of age, and my wife, dear Christine, over there, and we live in North Wales. I've got 1 son, 2 grandsons. As has already been said, I've spent my entire life looking into phenomena of one kind or another, and especially UFOs. Why do I do it? I do it to try and settle whether this thing that somebody's seen, or I've seen myself, is just some common thing misunderstood, some kind of military craft, or could it be, heaven forbid, a UFO from an extraterrestrial? But all I'm interested in is the answer. When I've got it, I don't care if it turns out to be a jumbo jet, a bird, an aeroplane, or Superman, as long as I get the answer. And nobody that you will look at will spend as much effort as I do to try to get to the answer. And the data banks and the people that I will use to get to that answer will absolutely astonish you. But I will get to the answer. I've been fortunate, if you can put it that way, if you believe in coincidences, and I have one every single day. Today's no exception. Very lucky to have had some of the most important cases that have ever been written about. Not just to do with UFOs, but to do with the paranormal and the like. They have left me totally stunned, and I don't stun very easily, but they have. I'm in 15 books currently. I didn't write any of them myself. I don't agree with everything everybody's written, but nonetheless it's nice to be mentioned now and again, isn't it? Several of my cases have been made into the X-Files. Some of you may have seen the X-Files on the telly. Well, 3 of my cases actually are the basis for the stories on the X-Files, to which I've got some lovely signed autographs from the staff and what have you. But that's another thing. North Wales. We forgot to mention actually that I also lived in South Wales for 25 years. I lived in the little village of Machen, halfway between Newport and Caerphilly, and while I was there investigated UFOs as passionately as I am doing currently. I'm often asked if I actually believe in UFOs. The answer is no, I don't. I do not believe in UFOs, and I'll explain why. A belief to me is just something that people choose to cling to in the absence of any real proof. That's a belief. No, I don't believe in UFOs. I absolutely know that they are real. Absolutely. In this presentation, I'll only be able to offer you a fraction of the vast amount of data that I've got, but I hope it's going to be interesting. I've amassed some amazing stuff. I hope by the time the talk's over, you'll understand why I'm so sure, and just maybe convince you to go seeking your own proof. For as Mulder said in the X-Files, the truth is out there, and we went out and found it. I'm going to tell you about some pretty strange events that at first seem scattered, but I think they are related and part of some grand UFO plan that's going on to this very day. I'm not sure when these events first started occurring. I suspect it could be way back in the past. Certainly they date further back than when I first moved to Rhyl, North Wales in 1979. So I'm going to start with 1978, if I may. And I'm going to begin with Anglesey. I don't live in Anglesey, I live in Rhyl. But Anglesey is quite near, and I've spent half a lifetime there. First, I'm going to take you back to September 78, when these events happened, the year before I moved there. This report was actually compiled by Federation UFO Research from Cheshire. Right. The following, can I just have a slide up, please? Thank you. And again. Yes, you probably recognise them too. They're helping me with my inquiries. Okay. Next one, please. Right, this is Anglesey. I'm sure none of you really need me to tell you where Anglesey is. Let me just think a second. See that? Yeah. That's good. It's my little UFO that flies around. Can you see it? I'm going to take that off because it's brighter without. Okay, this is the Isle of Anglesey. I live just up the road here a bit. Most important, the areas I'm going to talk about, although there's stuff all over the island, is this area here where there is a mountain. It's called Parry's Mountain, and below it, as you can see there, almost in the centre of Anglesey and 2/3 of the way up is Llanilar, as it is called, okay, which is a very tiny little village. And the top end is called Parry's Corner, which will feature in what I'm going to tell you. Okay. The first indication that something unusual had occurred in the Llanilar area came from several newspapers sporting such ludicrous headlines as 6-foot silver-suited spaceman chases cows. They love it, don't they, eh? If there was little green men as well, they'd absolutely love it. By the time several of the witnesses had given their accounts of the incidents on Welsh television and radio, it was decided by Few Four to investigate the case in depth. Prior to the investigation commencing, Few Four contacted Anthony Pace of Beaufort. I think we may have a picture of him if we could move on one, please. This is a stylised picture. This is from their actual report. You can see Llanilar marked on there. It's Anglesey again, of course. Tony Pace, who built his own observatory and is a very keen UFO investigator. The names and addresses of the witnesses, I've tried to figure around them a bit. He figures later in the talk as well. Tony contacted Larry Dale of Beaufort and obtained the relevant information plus a brief rundown of the incidents. It was at this point that Martin Keatman became involved in the case and decided to undergo a joint investigation. So Llanilar itself. Llanilar lies at a point just north of the centre of the island. Itself is a small rural township surrounded by a seeming endless vista of undulating farmland. I think we may have a slide of Llanilar. That's Tony Pace, yeah, we're getting there. Right, hold it there. The town has only 2 main streets, lined by quite old buildings. The main scenario of this report, the Machen Estate, is quite a recent building development. Just to the west of the town lies the Bangor to Amlock Railroad, which borders onto the scene of the incidents which follow in this report. The investigations were started on the 5th of September 78, when a team of Few Four members gathered in Staffordshire set out for Anglesey. Whilst en route, the investigators checked with Colwyn Bay Police Headquarters to ascertain the depth of the police investigation into the sightings. Although several of their police officers had seen something unusual on the same evening, they had been told that they were meteors, as usual. It was decided at this point to go directly to Llanilar. On arrival at the sighting area, it was agreed that the first priority would be to ascertain if the object seen had landed, and if so, were there any traces. Several witnesses came forward to show the investigators the area where the UFO had apparently landed. Armed with this knowledge, they immediately undertook an examination of the area. Since the initial sighting on September, there had been heavy rainfall and high winds, and although the majority of the surrounding terrain was rough grazing land, there were a number of fields which were rather marshy. It must be noted at this point that a number of the fields were inhabited by cattle, and this, combined with the adverse weather, made the chance of finding any traces rather remote. Now, this all may sound a bit boring, but I just wanted to show you the breadth of this and the sheer content of it, if I may. Even if the object had landed, the possibility of finding traces was now remote. Although the police were on the scene of the incident shortly after 9 o'clock on the evening of September, no examination of the area was actually undertaken. So you can well imagine how interested they were in it. The following accounts of the UFO sightings are information given by the witnesses who live in and around the village of Llanilar. The incidents are set out in time sequence, starting with the date. Witness first. Mrs. Helen Roberts and Mr. Glynwyn Hughes, 44 and 46 years old respectively. Mr. Roberts and Mrs. Hughes were taking their dogs for a walk on the outskirts of Llanilar when they noticed the strange appearance of the sky about 1750 hours. The whole sky seemed to be coloured red, and the atmosphere was very heavy and the area quieter than usual. They then noticed what appeared to be a strange-looking cloud. The witness described the cloud as being roughly circular in shape, black at the bottom and white on the top. They thought it unusual because it was the only cloud in the entire sky, and they watched the object for 30 minutes. Witness 2. Mrs. Betty Owen, 50 years of age, was told by her neighbour to come outside and look at a strange object in the sky. On going outside, Mrs. Owen saw what appeared to be a silver ball. She watched the object for 5 minutes. After watching the object for a while longer, she finally went back in her home. Another witness, Elian Williams, who was 12 years old. Elian was playing with several of his friends in a field which leads onto the rear of Machen estate, when he noticed a strange circular-shaped light that emitted a bright light from its surface area. As the object descended, the light intensified and grew in apparent size. While still descending, the object returned to its original size and magnitude. It was at this point the witness became apprehensive and decided to make all haste home. He did notice, however, that the cattle in the next field seemed very disturbed. David Mark Hesketh, 12 years of age, probably the main witness of the Llanilar sighting, although he is of tender age, his account of the sighting remained fluent and consistent throughout the investigations. At the above date and time, David claimed that some friends and himself were playing football on the housing estate at Machen, when one of his friends drew his attention to a strange light which appeared to be descending onto a field behind the estate. He decided to take a closer look and ran to the gate leading onto the field, keeping the object in view all the time. From this point, he could see the object more clearly, which was still descending. He described the object as bullet-shaped. Him up there. Excuse me. It was a bright white colour, except for a glowing red band, which ran around the perimeter of the object. The witness also noticed a series of red lights which ran across the breadth of the object. As the object began to near the ground level, more detail could be seen. David noticed that there were 2 protrusions on each side of the craft, which you can just see there and there. It was at this point that David felt apprehensive and discussed what to do with his friends. During this short conversation, he momentarily lost his concentration on the object, and when he looked again, the object appeared on or near the ground. But the most surprising factor was the object appeared to be a different shape. David described it as appearing to be 2 circles of light the inner circle being dull red in colour, which was surrounded by the outer circle, which is a brilliant white. The perimeter of this circle was emitting a red glow. It appeared to go behind some trees and then was completely blocked from his view. All that could be seen was a white glow from behind the trees. His friends left at this point to tell their parents, and although David could hear no noise from the object, the cattle and horses in the surrounding fields seemed extremely disturbed by something. Several cattle fled from one field to another, but David couldn't see what the cause of the disturbance was. At this point, some of David's friends ran to their parents and others to ask their opinion, and although David could hear no noise coming from the object, the cattle and horses in the surrounding fields seemed extremely disturbed. And this goes on. They're seeing this object on or near the ground, and then David described the figures that got out of the craft, their clothing and movements. They were walking in the field that I was in, he said. They were only 125 yards away from me and walked on a parallel path to me. They walked one behind the other, the second figure being 10 to 15 feet behind the first. They seemed to be very tall, although I couldn't make out the lower half of their legs, hands or head due to the growing darkness. The central part of the figure was grey in colour, except for a black band running vertically down the back and a bright red band running horizontally across the figure, just above the waist. Both arms were black in colour, but no hands, head or legs could be seen. The second figure was viewed sideways on, from the knees upward. Once again, the head, the hands could not be seen. The second figure similarly seemed to be dressed in a one-piece garment which was coloured grey all over except for a fuzzy white band which ran horizontally across the side of the figure just above the waist. David also claimed that he noticed the material was wrinkled at the waist. The two figures walked slowly across the field, one behind the other. David claimed that the first figure had his arms raised above his head, although he could not see any details. Can we have another picture, please? I think some of this may be on there. There we go, these descriptions. These are the actual drawings that they made at the time. Can we have another one, please? I think there's more. Hold it there, please. So this goes on, full descriptions of figures walking across the fields. He had no trouble in getting through to the police, but once contact was made with him, they had great difficulty in hearing what he said, because there was a great deal of crackling and a strange high-pitched hum on the line. Although David had made many calls from this telephone box previously, this is before you had your phone in your pocket, he had never before noticed such strange and persistent interference. However, he did manage to relate his experience to the police, and they acknowledged his call by sending patrol cars to the scene of the incident some 12 minutes later. On their arrival, the police interviewed a number of witnesses about the incident. They also went with an owner to one of the horses to try to calm the animals down. The owner stated that when they approached the horses, they reared away. They were out of breath and were sweating profusely. After 45 minutes, the police left the area and said they would return at the weekend to carry out more interviews. They never did come back, despite what they said. Witness Patricia Owen, 21 years of age, housewife, was talking to one of the neighbours outside the front door. Suddenly a child ran up to her and explained that a flying saucer had just landed in the field behind the estate. Without any hesitation, Mrs. Owen ran into her house and went upstairs to a rear bedroom which overlooks the fields at the back of the estate. Initially, she assumed that the children had probably mistaken a helicopter for the supposed flying saucer. But by the time she had reached the bedroom, there was no sign of the alleged saucer. But as she visually scanned the fields, she caught sight of three tall men walking parallel to a hawthorn hedge. She last saw the three men walking up an inclined field, and at this point she shouted to the children to go and phone the police. She then went to the town's market to await her husband to return, and was still very nervous. Together with her husband and child, on arrival, she found that a crowd of people had gathered. When she inquired as to what was happening, a police officer asked for her name and address and said that he would call at her house over the weekend. She has not been interviewed by any member of the police. And this goes on, the 27-year-old Patricia Mary Parry, and she was seeing a flying saucer landing in the field behind the estate. We're not talking here about a dot in the sky, and I should tell you that they're within a stone's throw of RAF Valley, which is quite nearby, just over to the other side of the island. These people see aeroplanes taking off and flying around every day of their lives there, because this is where they train. This is where one of the famous royals trained with his helicopter plane and so on. So when you say to them, well, you were mistaken, this has got to be an aeroplane, take my word for it, because I have, they burst out laughing at you and tell you to go away in their fluent Anglesey Welsh. Well, I think it is anyway. So it goes on. There's Jeremy Burford, 17 years old, and, watching another object for 20 minutes. Carmen Jane Burford, 12 years old. All the elderly children and most of the adults in the area are all reporting UFOs and landed objects. Balls of light, objects appearing in half over a tree, it hovered, and so on. Llanilar has an unusual claim to fame, and it's this, and it's one that I didn't understand at the time, and some have joked about it, but more of that in a moment. Llanilar holds the record for the most suicides per head of population in the entire of Europe. Now, isn't that strange? An idyllic little village in beautiful countryside with fantastic views, and not the rat race or pressure life that you would get in a big city, and yet so many of the people there choose to kill themselves and have experiences that they don't want to talk about when I try to interview them. Numerous people. I've said to them, well, you can talk to me, you're perfectly safe, and if you tell me it's a secret, then it's between you and I, but tell me what happened. I don't want to talk about it, and it frightens me to think about it. So, well, has anything ever happened to you to cause you to be afraid? No, but I'm really scared about it, and I don't want to talk. And other villagers tell me not to talk about it in case anybody comes asking questions. And this seems to be the prevailing atmosphere in the area. This brings me to the Pensacola incident. I was contacted by a Mrs. P, use that if I may, in November 1980, and asked if Christine and I would come and visit the post office, which we did on the 2nd of November 1980. Now, this is Llanilar, and if we can have one more slide up, please, thank you. Right, and that there, in the centre, is the post office. Can you see the little signs outside? That's the post office in the village. Sweet little place, not the sort of place you want to go to and commit suicide, but nonetheless, this lady rang me up. She said, I'm very concerned, my child's had an awful experience, which is quite frightening, with his friend. And I believe that you're somebody that looks into these things. Would you please come and talk to them, see if you can make any sense of it, and in any way can help. So we're delighted to do it. And when we got there, Gerald Keller, aged 12, he gave me the sighting account, which is dated the 2nd November. As I'm studying, looking at you people, this is the sighting account that was filled in on that day, and the drawing that was made by his own hand at the bottom. What I did is I separated the two boys in two different rooms. We gave them some paper and a pen and said, would you like to draw a picture and give us some idea what you were looking at? And as you'll see in a moment, the pictures are very similar. His own words read on here, we were walking along Tarrant Hill, pulling a go-kart, and I looked up and shouted, look at that, David. And David looked up, and I ran up, leaving the go-kart. When we got to the top of the hill, there was a giant disc shape, like two saucers, one on top of the other. It had 20 lights, about 7 of them coloured roughly about it. I ran to the side of it, and I could see a light blue half of a football underneath. I ran behind the lamppost, but I was still watching it. It turned over in mid-air and went very fast towards Paris Mountain. There was a star-like object there. The saucer went into it, and the star-like object disappeared, and I was very scared. His mum told me that he hugged the lamppost and wet himself. That's how frightened he was. Really frightened. The other lad, David Pritchard, his friend, also made a statement, and his description was near identical, up to when Gerald had dug the lamppost. At that point, David added that the object then moved directly over them, and although he was terrified, he continued to watch and saw the underpart of the craft. I think if we move on, we might actually see their drawings. This is the first one. This is Walker's. Now, pay close attention. You can see that there is some sort of ball bit sticking out at the bottom, and there's also some flaps at the side, and what look like windows or lights going around the perimeter of it. If we can have a look now at the second one, remember these are done individually, they weren't colluding together or anything. This guy, of course, Pritchard, had got a much better look of it all. The other one was that scared of in the lamppost. But as you can see, it too has got a bulbous bit at the bottom, it too has got protrusions underneath, it's got some sort of lights that go around the perimeter, but he was fortunate enough to look underneath it. And here, if you see, you can see what looks like legs folded into it. And that ball bit at the bottom is separated with a globe. Now, I know that children have a fertile mind and can invent things, but I was the investigator. I had these two children, all to myself. I spoke to them, I talked to them, I tried to catch them out. And I believe, honestly, that they had this experience and they saw this object. I conducted these interviews, obviously with the permission of the parents and in the presence of them. It was on the evening, however, of the 17th of November, after I was home, that I got another phone call from postmistress, Mrs. Pritchard. She sounded agitated and simply told me to turn on my TV and watch the news. I already had the TV on, so I switched channels to hear the tail end of a report regarding a young man who had gone missing on Parry's Mountain. A full-scale search had already been launched. Let me just tell you something. If you intend to get lost at any time, right, there's one place in the world where you're going to be found, right, because it is the headquarters of the search and rescue, of the Coast Guard, of RAF Valley, right? Almost everything is there at Holyhead and around that Anglesey area. So if you're going to get lost, you couldn't do it in a better place, because as soon as you report it, there are people in boats, people in cars, and so on, and people in aircraft looking for you straight away, which is the case here. Can I have another picture, please? Right, this is actually Parry's Mountain on the top. If you carried on down that road you can see in the middle photograph, you would go down the hill and you'd be at the Parish Corner post office we've just talked about. Okay? It's got the most astounding landscape that you'll ever see in your life here, because it's a massive copper mining area. It's not active at the moment at all. And one day when I was talking to astronaut friends about this, and I said, you know, why am I getting all this activity there? Because, by the way, all of NASA are into UFOs like you would not believe. They can't tell you that, because every time they mention UFO or alien, their funding stops. And they nearly went bankrupt 3 times. The last time because they were searching for extraterrestrials, setting the search for extraterrestrials. And they've had to go public with it, because obviously, you know, the funding just dries up. People don't mind paying for space research and medical research and Teflon tea-pans and everything that comes out of it. But when they mention anything to do with the possibility of aliens, they fade away rapidly from it. But here I must remind you, if you want the proof, people always say to me, you talk a lot of rot, you don't give any evidence. Well, I'm going to give you some now. J.F. Blumrich, who was in charge of NASA, chief engineer of NASA, right, wrote a book in his lifetime. And this book, what do you think it's about? Do you think it's about the amazing work and the research that they've conducted at NASA and all the wonderful things he achieved while he was in charge of it? No, it's called The Spaceships of Ezekiel, right, and it's about UFOs. This is your top man at NASA. UFOs he wrote about in the book. He discovered that in the Bible, this craft came down to old Ezekiel, and it's so well described, I never thought about it in terms of engineering, But it's so well described, wheels within wheels, and it turned without turning and all this. This guy is one of the greatest engineers in the world. He took one look at this and said, they're discovering a new invention here. They're talking about a new invention. So he went out and he drew pictures of what he thought he was listening to in that book. And he patented it. And it is the only system of moving things to and fro on the same wheels. Right? He patented it, this guy. And then there's another one who designed the Apollo 4 spacecraft and has got the most inventions in the world to his name, and he wrote a book about UFOs. This is NASA. They won't talk about it because officially UFOs do exist, and if you report them to them, this is the official NASA, they will look into it if you've got any evidence. That's it. But they won't accept anything from it. Okay, so I turned the news on, and there it was. This young man's gone missing on Paris Mountain. Can I have another picture, please? Thank you very much. This again is Paris Mountain. A very desolate place, I might tell you, but exceptional. You could film, I bet somebody's made films there, you know, for space. It's amazing. One more, please. And this is the very spot on this corner. If you went up there, you'd be to the quarries. But this is the top of the mountain, and down there is the post office we've been talking about. This young man has driven to the top of this mountain. He has got out of his car, left the keys in it, left the door open, and disappeared off the face of the earth. Fortunately, as I say, you can't, lose yourself in a better place than the top of Paris Mountain, because within no time whatever, search and rescue were out. People on the ground, mountain rescue people, right? There was a search and rescue with helicopters. The whole works are looking for a young man on here. They searched every inch of this, and the weather was closing down, but they didn't ever find him. Every night, for 10 days, the news actually ended with an update on the fruitless search, which had included tracker dogs, divers searching ponds, and eventually, after 10 days, the search was called off. From that day to this, his body has never been found, even though, as I say, they've got the best chances of finding him. Other sightings over Anglesey include August 67, a UFO follows a HGV driver and his mate from Holyhead across Anglesey. Large, brilliantly illuminated sphere was able to move up and down vertically, and it was silent. And then another news clipping, which is in my stuff, and I've handed it over to your wonderful organisation here so they can examine it, is a UFO flew over our school as the headline of it. A silver cigar-shaped craft with a black dome on top. 1978, a large number of sightings over Anglesey, including flying triangles. September 79, a woman in her 30s witnessed orange pulsating object in Llanilar. A 20-year-old woman from Llanfair PG witnessed a circular UFO at close range and now suffers from abductee symptoms. 1992, husband and wife see one over Anglesey. Through binoculars, large object radiating red, silver and green bands. 3 small round objects approached it and appeared to disappear into the larger object. Like I said, if these were coming scattered corpses from all over Britain, I tend to look at them slightly more sceptical. But as I've explained to you, when you are living near all this aircraft activity, all this shipping activity and so on, you see this stuff every day. You're not going to get excited about seeing an aeroplane going over, because if you could stand still for 10 minutes on Anglesey without seeing one, there's something wrong. So, February 1996, a silent oval object that pulsed in an erratic fashion. Where am I up to? Here we are, 1996. 3 elderly gents near Holyhead see a UFO which hovered and displayed 2 sets of circular lights. They've lost approximately an hour of their journey time and can't explain it. I'm now going to show you what I discovered has been going on for years nearer to where I live, but first I will show you how my quest started. On February 24th, note this is a winter time please, in 1979 a UFO sighted manoeuvring over the northwest. There were many reports received by the British UFO Investigations Bureau, plus reports sent to police, airports and radio stations. It was extensively investigated. They actually produced a map of the flight path based on the eyewitness account. I think we may have this. Yeah, no, that's the UFO over the schools. Did the girls see this UFO over the schools? I'll catch up with my slides in an hour. Carry on. One more. Thank you. Yes, there we go. Now you'll notice at the top there's a dotted line that goes in and out there. And all those areas that are mentioned on there, right, Lancaster, Fleetwood and all this stuff all the way around, Ormskirk at the top and so on, all the way around, all witnessed this same UFO travelling in this direction. Bear in mind, this is coastal, and so all of these places have their own coast guard, right, and lifeboat stations. So what you've got is one coast guard station saying, I've got an object travelling extremely low just above the water, right in front of me, going from north to south. It's going at a fair speed, so you should get it yourself in about 5 minutes. And then next minute, the next station says, oh, I've got it coming. Yes, I can see it now. It's coming along here. And all the way down, they watch this right round the Liverpool Bay. Now, it's very hard to determine, from the eyewitnesses that I've studied, whether the object was, as the dotted line shows, over the land at this point, or still over the sea. So if you're looking at it this way, you see it, right, and from the land, but it may or may not be over the land, it may still be over the sea. I'll just point that out to you. But one thing that's most important I want you to realise is where it ends, where the arrowhead of that ends. Now, I didn't make this report myself, as I said, it's a report conducted by other people. But when it got outside Rhyl, no more reports were made of it. The next Coast Guard station along Corwin Bay there was looking out, ready for the object to come along. It didn't come along any further. It only got as far as Rhyl. So you can imagine, I was very interested in this, so I just moved into the area, and here we've got this amazing set of reports by numerous witnesses, all talking of the same object that had been witnessed. Okay. I simply asked the question, why? There can be only two real explanations. One, it went up into the sky, or two, it moved inland, and there could actually be a third one, it might have gone down in the water. But just bear with me a while, and I'll make it all a little sense. My dear wife and I are walking along the promenade in Rhyl, which is very beautiful. Come up and see us sometime, sunny Rhyl. And we're walking along the promenade, and we come upon the Coast Guard station, where we've got a smashing lifeboat. And if I can have the next slide, please. This is our modern Coast Guard station here. Now, that little building on the extreme left of your picture with two yellow blobs on it is actually the Coast Guard station, which used to be on the top of our lifeboat station until we had a new one built. So if we can have another slide, please. Here it is today. There's our modern thing. This is too small to be the Coast Guard station. The windows are too small. And again, please. Carry on, please. There we are. This is the Coast Guard station, which is now at the back of it, which is completely useless for seeing anything, by the way. Next, please. Right. Here, I've managed to dig out one of the original photographs before they built the new station. And that's it there. It's a brick building, as you can see. The lifeboat's in the bottom. There's the launch ramp. Rhyl in the background there. But on the top of it, you'll see what looks like an aircraft radar room at the top. But it's actually the Coast Guard station. You can see the little windows around it. Can anybody at the back see any of these? Yeah. Okay. Well, if you want to later on, I've got the actual original pictures with me, so I can have a look. But there's all little windows around it, and they sit in there, and they look out to sea and try to save lives. We're walking up on some lovely sunny day, as you just saw that along there. And there's a sign outside I've never seen before. It says, Coast Guard Station, open day. So I thought, wow, it's a good opportunity. So I said to my dear wife, who was so delighted to spend some of her sunny day in Rhyl going into a lifeboat stay. As you can imagine, if you're married, you'll know what I mean. Right. So we went upstairs, and in there was an old man and a young man. So I played the devil's advocate, which I do frequently when I'm trying to find the truth out. I look through these windows like this. So, wow, fantastic view. God, you can see right out to sea here. Wow, it's absolutely amazing. You know all these crackpots that see these, what do they call them, flying saucer things, you know. You were sat up here every day looking out of these big windows. You don't see anything like that, obviously. And I pause. And the young man says to the old man, tell him about the one that come up out of the sea last week. So, don't be daft. What do you mean come up out of the sea? What, an aircraft or what? It's flares. Oh, no, he said. These come up out of the water and went against the prevailing wind. The flares don't do that. He said, and then they just stood there, and didn't do anything for ages. And we've got binoculars and eyeing them. What on earth can that be? Is it some kind of signal? Is it? Have we got to launch the boat? What have we got to do? And they're looking at it, and then all of a sudden it started to grow bigger rapidly. And what they discovered, of course, it was coming straight to them, straight at them, from over the top of the water. This is not something, by the way, 20,000 feet up in the air, one of the aeroplanes from Liverpool Airport. This is down above the water, just above the water. And it just misses the top of this when it goes over them. And it goes straight inland from there. And if you look at the very top of my picture, you see a lot of green and grassy land. Yes, it went over the top of that tent, but in 5 seconds, it was already over the green and grassy lands. Why? Because there is something called the Clwyd Vale. You can just, if you look carefully at the top left-hand corner, see some mountains starting to poke up. What happens is there's 2 mountain ranges. The mountain range on your left is much higher than the mountain range on your right, but they're both high mountain ranges, and the valley in between them is vast and wide. I did some research and I found out that RAF Valley fly low-flying aircraft down here occasionally, and what they do is they try to bomb Denby Castle without being seen on any of the radar, which means they were flying less than 200 feet off the ground. Doesn't sound like much, but when the jet comes over you from absolutely nowhere and it's 100 foot off the ground, it nearly takes your head off and frightens the living daylights out of you, because I've been there, well, I've been down there viewing. So, it's straight down there. Now the advantage is, the minute you enter that range, which is only just the other side of where you see those buildings, nobody can see you, neither civil aviation or RAF Valley radar. No radar can actually see you in that trough. The objects then go down this range all the way to the town of Denby. And then they usually turn at Denby and go in another trough out to the Denby Moors. Now if you get yourself a map and open it up to the Denby Moors, you'll find that with a careful placement of a pin, you could stick it in the Denby Moors 9 miles from any building of any kind. That's how remote it can be. And if you step off the road up there and start walking across those hills and so on, you could be lost in no time, and believe you me, it's really hard to find your way around there. There's only one main road that goes all the way over the top of the Denby Moors, just one. Okay, can I have a map now for North Wales? That's a view, by the way, from the Coast Guard station. It's very exciting, as you can see. All the nude bathers in the front and the people in the back waving from the Isle of Man. Right, here we are. Map of North Wales. Now what you're looking at there, apart from this tangled mess that you can't see at all from the back, is look at the coast part at the top, that's the blue water bit, and you'll see 2 blobs in there. The blob on your left-hand side is Rhyl, and the blob on your right-hand side is Prestatyn. And this yellow band that comes down here, can anybody see a yellow band from there? No? It's not too far back, move up. Anyway, that yellow band down there is the Clwyd mountain range. Okay? And this bit of a band down here is also the range on the other side. It's pretty good, you know. I tell you what, I've got brilliant operatives here. Absolutely fantastic. So, once you've entered this trough, you can virtually do what you like. Obviously, in broad daylight in the summer, it's a bit dicey because people may just see you, even though it's extremely hard to see anything that's only just above the houses. If you fly something high in the sky, everybody can see it. If you fly it just above the height of a house, nobody can see it unless you're standing underneath it, because it's obscured by all the buildings around you. Try it yourself and you'll see. If you look down your garden and think something's just above the roof of your house, see how easy it would be to disappear as soon as it's moved. But if it's up in the sky there, everybody can look up and see it from any angle. Okay, so that's a map, just to give you some idea what we're talking about. Okay, run another one, please. This is a map I've drawn, which makes it more easy to understand. Rhyl and Prestatyn has got a lump in the middle with no built-up area. All there is in the centre of there is a golf course and a holiday park. Those blue dots on there are actual UFO reports. And they're specifically the ones which I'm pretty certain are not any kind of military craft, which are the real thing. Okay. When do they occur? Well, they always occur in the winter. It doesn't mean to say that they can't appear in the summer, but they do always appear in the winter. As soon as you get sort of mid-November and carry on through, you know, the winter, they start appearing. They nearly get to Christmas, the more are seen. Strangely enough. But there's a reason for that. Let's have a look at their flight path for a second. Can we have another slide, please? Oh, by the way, these are sightings down that range, specifically down that area. And at the bottom is a bit of a graph. I only got to 1984 these, because I've had no time to put new graphs together. I could put this graph, it'd go all the way down to the basement of the building. But there we are, showing at the bottom a graph of the times of the year. Can you see December, November, and so on January? Those are the areas where we get the most sightings. Can I have another one, please? Right. As I was flying over in a UFO one day, I took this photograph. As you can see, this is Rhyl here. But if you look a bit beyond, a little bit further down the coast, at the very top area, you'll see it peters out completely. I live that area where it sort of peters out. And that's the area the UFOs come in on. They come in from the sea, coming up out of the sea, because they fly brilliantly in water, UFOs, and I've had that proven to me that these discs are absolutely the best shape you could be to fly through water. And they travel inland at a low range. You can just start to see the mountains starting to stick up in the corner of the right there. So once they get that over that little bit there, where you can see a sort of white blob at the top, that's the holiday camp. There's no houses there, people just, you know, holiday camp, which coincidentally closes during those months in the winter. So basically, you've got a route inland from the sea without crossing over the top of people or habitation. Let me see where I'm up to. Can I have another picture, please? Right, this clearly shows Prestatyn and Rhyl, and this area, see the golf club at the very top indicated, and this area in between where there is nothing at all. What a coincidence that they always travel across that golf course and down that line there. There are no buildings, and in the middle of the winter, in the middle of the morning, you could probably walk down there with a brightly lit umbrella and nobody would ever see you. And some of them around Rhyl walk around like that. Anyway, here we go. Closer look, please. Right, now we're on the promenade, and I've moved down a bit from the lifeboat station, which is a bit further up this end, and I'm stood now at the golf course. The promenade, the golf course starts right at the promenade, and there's nothing. You can go straight across that golf course. One more, please. Right, that's looking directly across the golf club, and you can see the start of the mountain range there. So once you've gone across here, and across that holiday park that's there, you're home and dry down the Gulf. Next, please. Right, this is the holiday park. In case you want to book a caravan while I'm here or anything, you know what I mean? Anyway, they go across here. Next, please. Now we're actually coming down into the vale, and this is taken from one of the hills. You see that hill at the top there, it's Mellon area. That flat bit in the middle is the sea at Rhyl, and this is the area they come across. As you can see, it's just fields. And if you fly at a low angle down there, you are really hidden. And again, please. Now you're starting to see the actual mountains as it comes down. It comes down this vale. And again, please. And those are the hills on the far side. So as long as you're over that green area down there, in that trough, you really are sheltered from any kind of prying eye of radar or anybody else, really. And again, please. And this is further down that valley again, taken from this side of the hill, looking across to the other side. And you can see it's easy, you just keep travelling low in the middle of the night down there, and nobody's going to see you. And they do. And again, please. Now, halfway down that range, on that hill that we were talking about, is this as and when television mast. This is where I get some of my television programmes from, and other people in the area. It's completely on its own on the mountain top, and there's only a little operating building that goes with it. But at night it has aircraft lights on it, so that, you know, an airplane doesn't come down and knock a top off it every week. So there are the lights on the top of it, and because it's in an area where there are no other lights, and it's halfway down on this mountain, it stands out like a sore thumb. Now, if I was a tourist coming here for the first time and travelling down there in my aeroplane or my flying saucer, and I saw this post, I would want to know what on earth that is and what it's doing. So I'd probably linger for a moment and go up a bit closer to it and see if I could see what it was, which is what people keep reporting. Can I have one more, please? Like this one. This is an actual drawing that the observer saw. He saw this illuminated object that looked like that. It had these funny legs on the bottom of it. It had lights all the way around it. And it was hovering around the as and when mast, television mast, which probably explains why the picture goes a bit funny now and again on my telly. Another one, please. This fascinates me, because this is a bit further down in Denby itself, but still on the main road, and this is called the Brookhouse Mill. It used to be a working water mill. There is still a water wheel there, and they do fine food and good ales there. They forced me one Christmas, because I put some equipment in there, to have to spend a Christmas dinner in there. It was absolutely all that. It was very worrying, because they locked us in all day. And they told us, please help yourself to all the drinks you can, because we're trying to get rid of them. And so we did. And very interesting it was too. But anyway, opposite here, there's a road. Where this tree is, you can see on the side, there's a road going up to Rhyl. Straight up there would lead you to Rhyl. And the other side of it are some little cottages. They're still there. And the chef who worked in here lived in those little cottages. So he gets up very early in the morning, he goes over to start his ovens and whatever it is he does preparing, because they do an enormous amount of food in here. So obviously he's got a lot of work to do. So early in the morning, he walks across this road, and he gets to just outside this building when a disc comes over at extremely low level and beams the light down to where he is. He is absolutely gobsmacked. He's quite worried about it, because he doesn't know whether it's going to fall on the building or beam him up or whatever it's going to do, but he's very concerned about it. And so he actually reported it, and he reported it to the police, and he also reported it to UFO people, which is where, of course, I came in. What he didn't know is while he was stood out there and this thing was over him, a car travelled up this road from Rhyl, going up the road towards Rhyl, with 2 police officers in it. A police car with 2 police officers in it. And the 2 police officers obviously saw this object, and they took a detailed account of it, and they went back to their station, and they reported it, and I managed to get a copy of the files of that actual report, and it really is a very good description. I mean, if a policeman can't describe something to us, we've got no chance, have we? But they did. And it's extremely good. It's identical to what this shepherd reported. Please could I have another one? It was such an important case that Flying Saucer Review, which is a famous magazine, I don't know whether it's still going, but it used to go for years and years, actually produced an article about it, interviewed the people, and it was their front page. And you can see a UFO drawn in and a beam down trying to represent what the chef had seen. Thank you. Where am I up to? Okay, come another one, please. Right. This is totally mystifying. I'm there collecting information about things that are going on up and down this line, and this appears in the paper. What's this all about? Well, I'll tell you. A farmer in one of those fields, under the line where the UFOs travel, is ploughing his field, and up comes a suitcase. So he opens this suitcase, and in there is an amazing radio transmission equipment, textbooks and film, and this equipment is state-of-the-art in the world at the time, absolutely state-of-the-art. The equipment was specially made for the KGB and only for the KGB. It was not made for anybody else. So it's a very rare item, and it took me a long time before I was able, and you can see it, MP is a questioning the Ministry of Defence and the like. What on earth is going on that the Soviets have got, secret radio transmitters down this valley? One more, please. This is photographs of the actual equipment. It took me a long time to get pictures of this. You will not believe what I do. And again, please. And again, please. As you can see, quite a bit of gear, all locked away in a case. Thank you. Right. It's a Soviet-Russian KGB anchor surveillance radio covert transceiver. That's what it's called. It was produced in the 1960s by Novosibirsk Electro Signal Bureau exclusively for the KGB in very limited numbers. It's designed for clandestine communication between agents and surveilling potential enemy agents. It permits coded signals to be sent silently by vibrations, voice or voice taps. Transmissions of voice, both scrambled as well. Very sophisticated for its time. Really sophisticated. Okay, next one please. Now this is the town of Denbigh. This is the last stop on the North Wales tour of the UFO aliens. They get as far as Denbigh. You can still see the mountains at the back there, by the way. They could continue down, and one or two actually have, but nearly all of them decide Denbigh's the place to turn a sharp right and go through a valley at the side of this castle here and end up out on the Denbigh moors where you can play all night to your heart's content and nobody can see what you're doing. Of course, the reservoirs are up there, so if you like hiding in water, you've got them as well. There's plenty for them to investigate. It's a wonderful area, but it's very remote. And this is Denbigh Castle. Again, please. Because it's a heavily populated area around there, there's been numerous sightings actually over Denbigh Castle. Can we have another one, please? Right. And this brings us to this guy. Just down from the castle, and near to the route that's going down the Crewe before they turn, this guy lives. Okay? Mr. Roberts, he lives in a cul-de-sac on a little tiny estate near the bottom, right adjacent to quarry. In fact, the end of his cul-de-sac is the fence that separates him from the quarry itself, which is a wooded area around a stone quarry. What he does is every night, as a habit, he takes his dog to do its business. This is at 12 o'clock midnight, by the way, every night he does this. And he sits on the fence, this little stile at the top there, and has a smoke. And while he's smoking, his dog does the business, and he gives it a couple of whistles, it comes to him, and off they go home to bed. Not that night, it didn't. He sat on that fence. The dog went over, started rummaging in the bushes, and next minute, a bright light rises up over the top of the trees that are in front of him, coming towards him extremely slowly, and it is colossal. I mean, really, really big. It's got what he thought were windows all the way around it, big windows, that sort of size of around the bar down there, that kind of size, and lights. He was scared to death. The dog ran off, it scared the dog, it went. So what he did is started running down this cul-de-sac because it was following him, and this white light was shining on him and he could feel the light, and he was so concerned that he was running down there and he was banging on people's doors, which is a great thing to do at midnight, if you can see what I'm saying. And one of the doors he knocked on was a neighbour. It wasn't a personal friend, it was just one of his neighbours. And the way the houses are built, the front door is recessed in to the building and the kitchen sort of thing is sticking out towards the road. So when you open the door, you can't actually see, you know, left of your house for a minute. So she came out and said words like, "How wonderful of you to knock at midnight, and how pleased I am to see you at this time," and so on. "Are you having any problem that I can help you with?" Right? To which Mr. Roberts said a few words which I can't repeat, and she can't repeat either, and said, "Come and look at this." So you can imagine how pleased she was to be dragged to the front of her house by this man at midnight. But soon as she did, this thing was passing them. Oh my God, what is this? Now, it's one thing for me to tell you about these things. It's another thing for you to hear it for yourself. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to take you on the interview that I did after he appeared in this paper. My dear wife, who was very good at a bit of shorthand and making a few notes and things, occupies people while I can question them and makes notes of everything they say. I also, with their permission, record the interviews, so I must have 15,000 interviews on tape of people seeing UFOs, some of which will absolutely magnetise you to the spot, because they're not all crackpots. And although this gentleman does not claim to be any kind of intellectual scholar, he nonetheless is a very honest and straightforward person, which I think you'll gather from the tape, because tonight I'm going to play you that original tape. You'll have to listen very carefully. Now, he's got a dog, by the way, which, while I'm trying to interview him, is trying to either pee on the recording equipment or it's trying to sniff the microphone to death, right? And Mr. Roberts himself gets very excited. I don't know why, because, I mean, lights come over the top of you every night, don't they, and frighten the living daylight. Anyway, he gets very excited. He gets so excited about to use a few bleeps in here. And he kept saying to my wife, "I hope you don't mind, I hope you won't mind," then you do it again, you know what I mean? But anyway, it adds flavour to it, so listen carefully, you might hear it. Who knows if it works?
Gary?
Yes?
I'm going to try to put the microphone up against it.
Okay, thank you. That looks like the button in the door. Thank you very much.
Yes, you're most welcome. I'll tell you what, let them have a look. I'll fill this
Yes,
form in.
what's that?
It'll be quick. And then you can both talk with all the pictures. Right. Hang on a minute, Chris. If you tell me now what happened, just as it happened, just in your own words, how it happened, and Christine, just take the photos. Oh, let's go there, let's go on.
Gets easier to hear. Gets easier to hear as it goes on.
12 past every night. For 4 years now. No, before this one. I'm getting to the style. I said the words to go 2001, you know. But it's just been there, telling me that I just didn't understand the style. I'm sitting in the style there and they're just looking and I get down and down. The first words that come to my mind, I'm going to tell you straight away, I'm sorry.
Don't try and eat my microphone.
No. You see, anyway, it come the other side of the page, you understand?
Yeah.
Now, it wasn't landing, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's landing, it was the other side of the trees. You know, so the other side's got a 100-foot drop in it, the quarry.
Excuse me, at the time you said it come across, was it rising or was it coming level?
No, in the beginning when I seen it, because there was nothing, I'd been walking up there, you know when you're walking up a hill,
Yes.
if there's anything in the sky, you can see it coming.
Yes.
There was nothing. I had my hands in the pocket, I go over there and back the next day.
It was travelling so low that it wasn't up in the sky.
I sat there. Anyway, I went to the right first to come back and I went back to the side, the nice sky there, somebody's put the feet on, I was there. Then my head down like this, I'm looking. You know, yeah, in the dark, you can't see nothing in the dark, both of me, because there's trees all around it. This is my attitude to it, I'm going to show you now. I was like this, like that, you know, I'm watching the dog had gone somewhere, I said, hey, come on back. We had done? No, I said, you've seen things. So look at I looked at my face, and I looked up, bloody hell. So I kept looking, and all of a sudden, I'll tell you straight, it was no bus.
Yes.
It was been 2 or 3, if not 3, I'm not saying it's 3 times long, but as big as that, I mean big. You know, very big, I mean, you see the bloody planes, but this was big, and it was high. And the lights on it was fantastic. And it's funny, nobody else seen it. And it was all the lights were on, and all the seconds.
You say the lights on, Mr. Rowe?
Yeah.
So are we talking
No,
about
no lights, no.
two lights?
No, there was colours, not colours, all, you know, you look at this house, or you got a block of flats there,
Yes.
just ordinary lights, and it was lit up. You could see nothing around, just lit up, and they were all like illumination was on.
So there was more than one light?
Bloody hell, there must be about 20 lights up and down. But the next
When you say they were up and down,
yeah,
they
2 floors like.
I see.
Anyway, all of a sudden, you know a torch, when a torch starts blinking, and when you light a lamp, and you're looking at a lamp, you seem to split, doesn't it?
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
When you shine a torch, and you look at a torch for the first time, but this was down, it's shone, and it's shone me, see? I was just looking at
This light, what particular light you're on about?
I like that. And I mean...
And this one shone down on you?
But when it came, you know, it came, you got a torch, and it's shining in the dark. If you look at a torch, I can't explain it to you, man.
It splits into like a star, is that?
Yeah, that's it. That's exactly what it's like.
I'll stop it there. I think you get the general gist of this. He's so carried away with it, he's really struggling to try and describe it to us. And every few minutes when he gets excited about it, the recorder has to go into a bleep or two. But if you were there, there's one thing you would definitely agree with me. This man has had an experience. What it was exactly, I wouldn't like to be, you know, putting my name to exactly. But did this man actually experience something, or did he make it up? No, he didn't. He really saw it, and so did his neighbours. He goes on to describe how he was knocking on the door and the lady came out and so on. Just excuse me a second. Mr. Roberts up there. Let's have a look at his drawing that he did for me, please. Can we have lights, please? There we are, that's his actual drawing. That's him sat on his stile, and this is the object that he drew, which was like a double-decker bus at his own explanation, bigger than a double-decker bus, and immediately over him. And as I say, he went knocking on people's doors in the morning. Now, in August 1999, I was contacted by a paraglider named Noel Humphreys, who was flying his paragliding from Bodfari to Denbigh, and he was getting a little too low as I neared Denbigh, when I suddenly saw something strange. It looked like a flying saucer was hanging around some trees. I always carry a camera, so I landed nearby and managed to take several photographs. Thank you. Hold it there. Bear in mind this was actually moving, but he managed to take several, you know, really good pictures of it. This guy's got nothing to, you know, no reason at all for trying to make it up or anything like that. And he's really good at his paragliding. I meet a lot of people who've got no reason on earth why they should want to, you know, start talking about UFOs. Like Doug Scott, the climber, contacted me once. And when he was climbing up Mount Everest, on one occasion, a big floating silver cube came by them up on Mount Everest. Everybody saw it, base camp, everything, and so on, and he put it in an interview. I said, nobody's going to believe me when I tell them that you've seen a giant flying silver cube over Mount Everest. So he signed a lovely big picture of him stood on Mount Everest at the bottom, put on the back. This is where I saw it. So I haven't brought that with me tonight, but I'd be only too pleased to show you in the future. But there's another one. Let's have a look at the second picture. This is a bit of a close-up of it. Unfortunately, moving, it doesn't do very good. Now, I've heard this 1,000 times before. It's blurred, it could be any damn thing. When it's absolutely in clear, sharp focus, like some of the pictures around you today, obviously it's made up because it's that clear. This is the trouble you have, and this is why I relate photographs to be the worst evidence in the world. Not least, of course, because everybody and his dog who's got a computer now can make his own. What's really important is the calibre of the witnesses, especially if it's multiple witnesses from different locations, and if these people have got any qualifications in that area, it adds to it, doesn't it? But lights in the sky, I just log them. Okay. Now there was not been a year without a reported sighting, right to and including this year. Can we have another clip, please? This is Nathan in I've got it here somewhere, 2012 this was, saw the UFO. Again, where he's got that circle on that picture down there is the Clwyd Range, by the way, in the background there. And again, please. I'm just flashing through these a bit quick. Okay, for the daytime. And again, over the top of Denbigh Castle. There's bound to be sightings there because that's the one area where they expose themselves. They do have to go over the top of Denbigh Castle to get out to the Denbigh Moors. And because it's a built-up area, there's always that remote chance that somebody is going to see it. And again, please. There we are. Brilliant, aren't they, dots in the sky and things like that? They don't mean much except because that people are claiming that they've seen it at the same time. Thank you. And again. Right. This is a close-up of the UFO. It's flying over Denbigh Castle. Close-ups don't do very good with photography, especially if they're digital nowadays. Okay, and again, please. Right. Can we flash through these a bit quick?
Yeah.
Right. This is a call for us to ask people to contact us if they see things. Can we keep going? Thank you. Okay, this is out on the Denbigh Moors, by the way. You can see the remoteness of it. It's an archaeological site in the foreground here. It's one of the reservoirs at the top. Keep going, please. There we go. This is one of the only buildings that stood on Denbigh Moors, and you can see the state of it now. I bet if I went there tomorrow, there'd probably only the bricks on the floor. But originally, I remember this is a beautiful old building that stood only. You could have filmed Bleak House there, or any of your Hammer House of Horrors if you wanted, because it stood on its own. Okay, thank you. Now, here are two letters, just as examples to show you. One time I was stupid enough to waste my time, frequently, by writing to the Ministry of Defence and the Royal Air Force, and asking them if a particular sighting that had had that week or that month or whatever it was one of their aircraft. And as you could read, if you could read this, as we don't know where any of our aeroplanes are at any time, we can't help you. So I contacted them back and said, I do hope you can find them in cases of war or anything. So eventually I stopped writing because all I get is complete dribble out of it. You might as well save your ink. But just to show you that we do try, you know, we really do try. And never forget I was with Nick Pope, who everybody probably knows was in charge of UFOs for the Ministry of Defence for quite a number of years, and who ranks commander in the Ministry of Defence, who told me at a conference, because I opened the first Welsh conference in Cardiff some years ago, I was opening speaker and I had all weekend with him, and I said, Nick, do you honestly believe that you can, oh yes, he said, I can find, in a minute I can contact one of these bases and I will have the information from there, anything they've got I can't access to. I said, do you really believe that? He said, oh yes, I do. I said, well I don't. I think you, like everybody else, are on a need-to-know basis. If they want you to know, they'll tell you. If it's anything really important, you ain't going to be, oh no. So with me at that conference like today, I've got information there, and even artifacts with me, and said, okay, here's a case where the Ministry of Defence admit their involvement, go and pull the data. So lunchtime, Nick Pope disappears, and I can hear him shouting and cursing in another room, and he come out and he had a face like a busted boot, and I said, did you find it? He said, oh well, they can't find it at the moment. In other words, he can't get everything he thinks he can get. He can get those cases where obviously it could be anything. When it could be definitely only something, he can't get them. That's what I found. Okay, I started an organisation, the Welsh Federation of Independent Ufologists, off with a famous lady, Margaret Fry, who lives up in North Wales, not far from me. And we had a centre at Llanilar, which has just reopened, and we had people from all over Wales coming up on a monthly basis to tell us their sightings, and all the sightings that happened in Wales came through us at that time. So the database for all that resides with me at the moment. Okay, I don't know what we've got next. Just flash through them, please. Yeah, these are all people that have had experiences, some famously abducted and goodness knows what. Flash on, please. Ah, stop there. Now this. This person is staying in a holiday camp at Prestati, and you can see the caravans he's in the foreground here. And he's taking this lovely picture, which shows the television masts, aerials, on the top of the mountain at Prestati. At the end of this picture here, the mountain turns and goes down the Clwyd Range. Now sometimes we have had UFOs skirting this valley coming down and then going down the Clwyd Range, and witnesses seen them actually going round and down the range. Now when he took this picture, right, he did not see at that moment what I'm going to show you. He couldn't see it, but then something moved, and what was happening, it was a UFO travelling extremely close to these woods at a really stupid low level, which means that you can't see them unless you happen to be right on it at the time. Now I'm going to try. If you look there, you might just see a white dot. Can you see it there? Yeah. You stood too far away. There is a white dot there, I can see it here. Take my word for it, it's there. This is a UFO travelling right against the side of that mountain, keeping close to the trees, going down there in broad daylight. Can I have the next picture, please? That's the object. There. Now, I've had this photograph analysed by experts, and this is not a touched or altered photograph in any way, shape or form. The object is Rhyl. It's about 30-odd foot in diameter, and it is travelling across this direction, close to those trees. This is the best I can do from pictures and slides. I mean, what you need to see is my original photograph and put it under a microscope. That's the best. But this is the best I can get it on this sort of system. And again, please. And this is the closest I can get to it. But it does actually have, I've darkened it because it does actually have features. That looks, actually, when you look at the negative, as if there is somebody stood at the top. It looks like a figure at the top of it, or leaning out of it at the top. It has definitely got bobbles around this edge. And I've seen many, many photographs where there's these sort of bobbly bits around the edge. You've probably seen them in books yourself. Okay, thank you, and again. Right, just flash through these. Constantly, at the right times of the year, there are sightings. and again please, and again. Just keep going. To give you some idea how many. They just keep on happening over and over again. If you analyse the directions of all these things, I don't know who he is, he's some bloke investigating it. And then there's this. I'm in a UFO group in Deeside, and I pick up my Sunday Express, and I read, strange debris out of the sky. And at first I thought, well, you know, it's a meteorite or something like that. But no. Farmer Rhyl gets up in the morning to see to his sheep, walks to his first gate, leans over the gate, and my God, as far as he can see, 4 of his fields are covered with what look like tin foil and pieces of metal that look like shattered glass. So he walks all the way around and he thinks, oh God, we've had an accident, some major thing here. So he looks in case there's a pilot, but that he can't find anything. But he finds pieces of this, some of which are nearly 6 foot. He goes to the police. The police arrive, walk around, oh my God, you've had a plane crash. He said, yeah, but where is it? Can't find it. Next minute, they've contacted the Royal Air Force crash retrieval people, and experts are walking amongst it going, well, that doesn't look like it's anything off an aeroplane. I've never seen anything like it. This is his recordings of what they said to him. Late afternoon, Ministry of Defence arrive. Caravans, equipment, some people in uniform, some people in plain clothes, putting up gas lighting all the way around, you know, these portable lights that they can put up all the way around. His description was, it's a scene from James Bond, Gary. That's what he tells me. He says, scene from James Bond. There's all this stuff around, there's people milling all over it. So eventually he goes to bed after showing them all where it all is and everything, and he gets up in the morning, they've all gone. And so is every single scrap of this stuff that was on his fields. Well, they say every single scrap. He may, and I'm not telling you he did, he may accidentally have felled a few little pieces somewhere himself, if you know what I mean. Okay, so we could stop there. And I read this, and if you swap farmer for rancher, you are reading Roswell. Right? Farmer gets up, this debris all over his field, it looks like shattered. Every word comes straight out of Roswell. So I get on the phone, Farmer Rhyl, yes, please could I come down and interview you and have a look at this land of yours. He said, you won't find anything, they cleaned it all out. So I go down there with a small team, we search, and everybody gets angry and fed up because they can't find anything. And then I look at the one field is bounded by a wooden copse. And you can clearly see the tops of all the trees right through this copse have been sheared off by a giant lawnmower that flew across the top of it. And where it ended at his field, it actually knocked branches and twigs and leaves and stuff right across the field in a row. There's no doubt at all, whatever this was, it hit this forest and shattered some pieces of it. But whatever it was, it flew away, losing 4 fields worth of material and still flying away. No engines, no electronic wiring, nothing you would recognise other than shattered glass metal, pieces of resin that you can't identify that look like fish scales, and this tinfoil stuff that's so strong you can stamp on it, it won't bend. It's incredibly light, super strong, and there was pieces. So I said to my guys, there's no way them people, I don't care who they are, can search a forest in the middle of the night. That's where we're going to look. We don't have to look very far, did we? Because we could see the damn line right across the tree. So we looked there, and we started to find pieces of the debris, which we recovered. I had some equipment with me. I won't tell you everything I had, but I can tell you that it wasn't radioactive, so I had a Geiger counter. But I could have done with more metal detectors. That's what we needed, and we didn't have. So I said to her, well, I'll come back next week, more of my colleagues, more equipment, specialist equipment, and we'll clean this wood properly. Right, he says. Day before I'm due to go up there, phone call, there, well, here, hello, Will. Yeah, you can still come if you want to, but you're wasting your time. How am I wasting my time? He said, because looking through my window, I can see a JCB taking the trees away. I said, what? He said, taking the trees away. So I ring up Forestry Commission, who's also in Llanilar, they're all in Llanilar, this stuff, and said, what are you doing at Llanilar? taking trees away. He said, wind damage. I said, but you usually take the trees away if you get any wind damage. He said, that's what I've been told to tell you. It's wind damage. And I could hear him almost laughing on the other end of the phone. That was it. That was the conversation. So it was a waste of time going any further. We did go anyway. He said, you come, so we went. I went there, and when I got there, as I drove up to the farm, I see another JCB and a lorry. And I can see the farm because trees are missing. And I come round to him and I say, what's going on there? He said, they're taking the soil now. Now they don't want to clean the area. There's nothing going on. We'll take the trees and then we'll take the soil away. But too late. Too late this time because we got pieces of it. And then it stopped it. After that, all my mail was intercepted consistently. It came in, every bit of it looked as if it had been through a mince, it all ripped open. It was accidentally ripped, Mr. Rowe. We had to, you know, and then they were ripping it and sealing it back up and saying it was damaged, so we sealed it back up for you. But what they were doing, basically, is reading all my mail. I come home from work, one lunchtime, I never do that. And there's two blokes fiddling on my windowsill, like this with a van outside, unmarked. Said, hi guys, as I walk past, what's happened there then? Oh, this bloke's complaining about his telephone. I said, you lie, I'm the bloke. I said, what are you doing? Where have you from? I didn't want to tell me much about it, but I got the number of the van straight away to start with, so we'll start with that. I'll start with the police secondly, and you can tell me. Anyway, it turns out they've been sent there specially from the telephone. I contacted the bloke in charge of the telephone, had him in his talk about trying to buy me off in there. Mr. Rowe, we're very sorry about this. Obviously a mistake. We've obviously got the wrong one. We're fitting this box on your windowsill for the benefit of everybody's health, and all this daft. So I said, I tell you what, while you're here, I can do with 2 phones upstairs and 1 in the hall. No problem, Mr. Rowe. Right, we'll get onto it right away. Next minute, I've got 2 phones in the what's it and 1 up the hall, which is as best I'm going to get out of it. And then, to top it all, right, it stopped. My mail wasn't being done. Well, it became wet for a while. It got wet in the rain, so we had to, you know, re-envelope it and all this. But always mail from a particular UFO centre. So on this, stopped all this, and then I couldn't understand. Every time I took a letter out of the envelope, it rolled itself up on the table. So I rang up my colleagues at the other end and said, what are you doing to these letters? Nothing at all. They're perfect, you know, straight out of photocopies or whatever, and put straight in the envelopes. So I was very fortunate to have a friend who was in high positions at one time, and shall we say, something to do with spying. And he should have been here tonight, actually. I'm very sad that he didn't make it. He was going to try to come. But he said, well, it's obvious, they're reading your letters. I said, well, they can't. They're still sealed. And the seals my colleagues put on there, which is the bank method, you sign your name and put sellotape on it. And frankly, you can't get it off, can you, without damaging the sellotape or the envelope. Let me just tell you something. If you intend to get lost at any time, right, there's one place in the world where you're going to be found, right, because it is the headquarters of the search and rescue of the Coast Guard of RAF Valley, right. Almost everything is there at Holyhead and around that Anglesey area. So if you're going to get lost, you couldn't do it in a better place, because as soon as you report it, there are people in boats, people in cars, and so on, people in aircraft looking for you straight away, which is the case here. Can I have another picture, please? Right, this is actually Paris Mountain on the top. If you carried on down that road you can see in the middle photograph, you would go down the hill and you'd be at the Paris Corner post office we've just talked about. Okay? It's got the most astounding landscape that you'll ever see in your life here, because it's a massive copper mining area. It's not active at the moment at all. And one day when I was talking to astronaut friends about this, and I said, you know, why am I getting all this activity there? Because, by the way, all of NASA are into UFOs like you would not believe. They can't tell you that, because every time they mention UFO or alien, their funding stops. And they nearly went bankrupt 3 times. The last time because they were searching for extraterrestrial setting. the search for extraterrestrials. And they've had to go public with it because obviously, you know, the funding just dries up. People don't mind paying for space research and medical research and Teflon T-pans and everything that comes out of it. But when they mention anything to do with the possibility of aliens, they fade away rapidly from it. But here I must remind you, if you want the proof, and people always say to me, you talk a lot of rot, you don't give any evidence. Well, I'm going to give you some now. J.F. Blumrich, who was in charge of NASA, chief engineer of NASA, right, wrote a book in his lifetime. And this book, what do you think it's about? Do you think it's about the amazing work and the research that they've conducted at NASA and all the wonderful things he achieved while he was in charge of it? No, it's called The Spaceships of Ezekiel, right? And it's about UFOs. This is your top man at NASA. UFOs he wrote about in the book. He discovered in the Bible this craft came down to old Ezekiel, and it's so well described. I never thought about it in terms of engineering, but it's so well described with wheels within wheels, and it turned without turning and all this. This guy is one of the greatest engineers in the world. He took one look at this and said, they're discovering a new invention here. They're talking about a new invention. So he went out and he drew pictures of what he thought he was listening to in that book, and he patented it, and it is the only system of moving things to and fro on the same wheels. Right? He patented it, this guy. And then there's another one who designed the Apollo 4 spacecraft and has got the most inventions in the world to his name, and he wrote a book about UFOs. This is NASA. They won't talk about it because officially UFOs do exist, and if you report them to them, this is the official NASA, they will look into it if you've got any evidence. That's it. But they won't accept anything from it. If you shake the ground, it will go off because it's very sensitive. This is something you put in one place. Sorry, go around then, please. Don't shake the table there. So it likes to be perfectly still to be set. And then what happens is, if there's a magnetic field, and this is a magnet. Now this is a little magnet, a UFO that's got enough energy to stop a motor car, right? Believe you me, it's going to make this work, and does. And that fuzzy noise you can hear is all the electricity that's in this building that is detected, the electrical field that's out there. But when you get this outside in an open field away from everything, this is totally silent, right? And anything that approaches it will immediately set off one of the two alarms in it, either the magnetic one or the electrostatic one, or both. But this is an invention of mine. I shouldn't really be showing these things now. So these are, as you see, just ordinary little pocket torches. See, I'm very much aware that I'm out here, perhaps tonight, walking across this car park, and there could be a UFO. And I want a UFO detector with me, right, that nobody else will know is a UFO detector. Are you with me? And this was my answer to it. People often carry a torch like this, just a plain old torch, but this one goes in this top pocket there. So when it shines, it's shining right up in my face. Are you with me? I walk along, and, oh my God, my lights come on. Nothing at all. Why? It's just a torch. That one isn't. It only goes off when it's in a magnetic field. You may think, well, that's not very sensitive because I got the magnet quite near. This is just a little weak magnet. But like I said to you, when you've got something over the top of you that's 30 foot in diameter and emitting a field so strong that the battery's packing on your car, right, that is going to light up. And once it does, it stays lit like that until I reset it. indicating to me that I've just been in the presence of a heavy magnetic field. I built the electronics into it many years ago. I've had it about 30 years, this one. And it's something I carry. I've got other equipment. I've brought it with me today. Perhaps another time, if you'll invite me again, I'll bring some stuff down to show you. But I've got equipment that you wouldn't believe, that would do all sorts of things. But this is my little little torch. I put the electronics. There's no room for electronics in hardly. So I had to build them into the top. You need a little circuit board inside of the machine. As you can see, it's very simple, but it works. Right? Okay. So, how strong are these? Excuse me, honestly. How strong are these fields? You may say. Well, it's one of my favourites, this. Now, if you're making a television program about UFOs, and everybody can say, oh, they've got an idiot on here now talking about UFOs again, which is true. But when you get really good cases, right, and they're making these programs, for some reason or other, they're invisible. It's amazing how invisible the Manchester Evening News can be, right, when the crew of a ambulance centre, right, find 3 UFOs in the air over the ambulance centre and can't make any communication on any of the ambulances or the ambulance centre with any of the... When you're stopping an ambulance centre from working in an area of Manchester, believe you me, it is important. Yeah? There's one. Why isn't that on any programmes? They did make the Manchester Evening News headline front page. But not a word have I ever seen. Have you ever seen this on one of your programmes on one of these idiots are walking around telling you about it? No, they don't. Is it still going on in North Wales? Well, this is one here, Daily Post 2018. This was last year. Now, every single day of my life, because I'm into the paranormal as well, I have amazing coincidences. Guess what yesterday's was? A UFO report from North Wales for me to bring down for you. Just to show you, they don't stop happening. It's either in here or up there, but it does exist. I'll show you in a minute, because I've definitely brought it down. Must be in that other thing over there. Right. Now, how do they work? How do UFOs work? Let's have a look at that for a second. Oh yes, there's that one. That's the latest one, look. 24th of June, 2019. The date yesterday. Yesterday. Right, are they still happening in North Wales? Well, you can't get in here unless, can they? It would have been this morning, perhaps. But I don't have time to look at it. Okay. Can we make anti-gravity materials? Of course we can't. We can't, can we?
Well, apparently they're back engineering and probably have.
Well, as you said, as Bob Lazar and the like, reckons that they have. In fact,
and I believe him. And his people, even though he's tried to be discredited.
Sports model. This is a scale model of Bob Lazar's UFO. The only difference between this and the UFOs I've seen in broad daylight at close range is there were no black panels around it, and instead of this being a sharp ridge, this was just gradual, like a music symbol, not as pronounced as it. This is perfect. It's exactly what it was like. Something that you might find interesting to know is you cannot enter into the Earth's atmosphere with a pointed object. At one time, in the 1950s, all rockets and everything had to be pointed, and spaceships that were coming here in the comics were all pointed. You can't do it. If you try to get a pointed object through the Earth's atmosphere, it melts off. Okay? That's because you've got to push the air that's burning at thousands of degrees in front of you, right, so that it doesn't burn the aircraft in half, which means that the objects have to be slightly rounded, and believe it or not, there is a very, very accurate radius that it has to be. If it's too steep, it doesn't work. If it's too flat, then it hits the air and bounces off it rather than go and penetrate it. And funnily enough, every UFO has this particular radius at the bottom. The space shuttle has this particular radius at the bottom. It doesn't come down point first, if you think it was pointed. It never does that. It comes down with a flat bottom, using the rounded bit at the bottom to push the air in front of it. That's how it comes down. Okay, it's called the flying brick, because the astronauts tell me that it can't fly at all. If they have to take off again, they're all dead. Right? They aim it at the ground, point it at the right angle, sit there and hope to God it hits the ground before they all burn to death. That's
they put an air bubble around it.
That's right. It pushes the air in front of it. It's like, you ladies, if you spit on an iron, it goes straight off the iron. Right? It never touches the iron because it does it. This is how UFOs work. I'm going to tell you the secret of how they work now, because I know this for a fact. They have all over them scales. I haven't got it on this model, but you can imagine this is covered in scales here. Okay? They're computer controlled scales. And what we've got is a method of repelling the air molecules from the surface of it electrically. Put high voltage into it, and it repels, right, the air molecules from the surface.
It's not actually touching any air then. It's
so it actually, thank you, Madam, it doesn't touch any air at all. It flies inside an envelope which is a vacuum. A vacuum. If you pull air away from something, it leaves a vacuum underneath it unless you replace the air. Okay, now then, you will all know from when you were in school that there is such a thing as air pressure. Right? It's pressing down on it. What is the air pressure? Is it 50 pounds a square inch or something? I can't remember. Or 15 pounds. It's quite heavy anyway. Right, we call it 50 pounds per square inch. It's pressing down on my hand now. Every square inch of that's got 50 pounds weighing it down. Why doesn't it go down 50 pounds on every square inch at the bottom, pushing it up? Right. Take the 50 pounds away from the bottom, and my hand would be flat on the ground immediately. Okay, now you've got it. The UFOs, you can't hear the UFOs. It's funny how many people said I didn't make a noise. Except those that were very close to it. Said, when I got right up close to it, it's a faint humming noise. Right? Why? Because you can't get sound through a vacuum. Okay? No air, no sound. So you've got a vacuum all the way around the outside. It can make as much noise as it likes. It probably sounds like a tractor. But you can't hear it, because you can't get noise through a vacuum. How thick does the vacuum have to be for you not to be able to hear it?
Not very thick.
Millionths of an inch thick will do. It's like, how much water does it take to float the Queen Elizabeth, and the answer is a cupful if you can get a basin the same size as it. That's a fact. It isn't the amount, it's the fact that it doesn't touch the sides. So what is happening is, when you want to go up, you cover all these except for 1 square inch at the bottom, and 50 pounds hits it right up the bum, and away it goes. If you get yourself a golf ball, which is about 1 inch in diameter, if you like, you put it on the ground, and you hit it with an iron club, it's gone before you can even snap your fingers together. And that isn't 50 pounds at hitting it. You see what I'm saying? So what they do, they want to go quicker, release more squares. All them square inches are hit with 50 pounds, and off it goes. You want it to go this way, release a square at the back. It's pushing it this way. Want to go this way, release a square at the side.
Are they the scales?
Yes.
Yeah,
I think they're the scales.
Yeah,
I
so
don't know how it works. I haven't got all the answers, but I'm absolutely convinced. Seeing them in broad daylight, really close, no noise from them. This is what's happening, right? And I still think there's some element of anti-gravity. Now, every time I say this, people say, don't be daft. There's no such thing. No such thing. Yes, there is. Yeah, this bloke invented anti-gravity. This is 1988. He was an expert in gyroscopes and the like, and he perfected this thing, and there's professors and everything in this article said this is absolutely staggering. It's going to change transport for the world. Everything's going to float and, levitate on its own. This is how it's going to work. What happened? If you read this, they whipped him off straight away to America, and he's never been heard of since, as far as I'm aware. But you can bet your life that he's still out there, something to do with anti-gravity. So when they say it can't, it does. The other thing is people say, well, I didn't see it in the sky, and all this. What's a picture in here I'd like to show you? This is an aeroplane taken recently, extremely close by the skystone on the hill as it flew past. It's what it's like down that Clewy Range when planes go by, right? And you can't see the aeroplane, or in part you can't see it, because it creates its own cloud. Now, I believe I have seen clouds that move, and I think, that's funny, they're all moving like this beautifully across this. Not this one. This one's going like this. How is that possible? Never see the UFO, just see a cloud moving. Lenticular cloud, shape of this, go across my sky quite often. I'm convinced that's what they're doing.
But they've also got invisibility that they're trying to
Well,
work out how
you
they
can
do
beam
that.
me up, Scotty, but at the end of the day, we can't prove it. That's my problem. I'm with you.
I think they are beginning to work out. They're
One of them.
starting to work out how they're doing the invisibility cloak.
And I'm dashing you as quick as I can, I promise you. Right? I hear anything goes on anywhere. I'm a dirty little devil. I will put plants in there. Group captain.
Just to understand you.
Sorry?
Would it be right if you all sat down again? To think.
Well, yes, I'm sorry. I beg your pardon. I've got you all standing. I did want you to see this.
Some people, I just think it's something.
Yes, I beg your pardon. Please sit down, and I won't be long. Yeah, that'll be fine. Thank you. Thank you very much. This is as near to where we are now that I could get out of my files in 10 minutes if I try harder. Sorry, I'm not speaking the microphone at the back. I'm surprised because with my voice, my wife says they can hear me and press starting from here, but I'm not sure. Anyway, a little while ago, Group Captain Joan Hopkins, who's pictured in here, is going to visit Port Talbot. Right, and she's coming to see, I think it's the WI. And I thought, that's interesting, because she's in charge, the only lady that's in charge is the station commander of one of our most important defence areas. This woman is the top. Okay, and she's coming to talk to a bunch of nice ladies in the WI. Well, one of the nice ladies in the WI had the cheek to ask her about UFOs. And you can guess which lady that was. And she said to her, what about these UFOs then? And I fully expected to get the usual answer. I think there's, the figment of imagination of people and what you usually get. But this is what she said. She was the RAF's first woman commander of an operational station. She visited her hometown of Port Talbot last week. I am talking about March 1983, by the way. But it's still important. To give her first address to the non-Air Force audience. Following her talk to a large gathering who attended the 40th anniversary celebrations of Port Talbot in a wheel club, Group Captain was questioned about the existence of UFOs. Fancy somebody asking that. She replied, I believe that I have seen sources with my eyes and on radar. I am convinced that they are around, but we don't know what they are. This is a lady in charge of one of NATO's most important air stations. Do they exist? She's telling you they exist. She sees them on radar there. So they do exist. And on that, I think I'm going to stop because I think there's a limit to how much I can stand and you can stand. But I'll just quickly, one more thing. Some of these things are fantastic. Reports of a giant UFO the size of a jumbo jet in the Middle East are being investigated. The inquiry was ordered by the Kuwaiti government after the mysterious object was said to have landed at a satellite tracking station. Two Kuwaiti newspapers said technicians looked on in amazement as it descended on the station. The report said that 7 men, including an American, walked within 250 yards of the UFO, which was dish-shaped. The men said they were frozen with horror and were certain that no humans were inside the flying saucer. After a few minutes, the object took off again vertically at high speed. I told you that NASA were investigating aliens and the like. and they had to stop because their funds ran out and they went bankrupt 3 times, and they had to fend it out to ordinary people in order to carry on with the work. So one of the places they fended it out to was Jodrell Bank, and I was very lucky to have a personal viewing with Dr. Morrison, who runs Jodrell Bank, and I went round to see SETI equipment with my own 2 eyes. I'm not sure he should have been showing me, but I did get to see it all. It's not very exciting. I didn't bring pictures with me tonight, I'm sorry, but I can do if you'd like me to in the future. But it was racks of equipment, each containing, I think it was 1 million radios, each tuned to a different channel. So they were scanning the skies on all different frequencies to see if they could pick up an extraterrestrial signal. The Jodrell Bank. It was very, very interesting. I'll tell you one more thing and I'm finished, honestly. He took me into a little cabin. I probably shouldn't do this, but he took me to a little cabin. There's all cabins on the side near to the big telescope. He took me in there and he showed me what looked like a black stove with a pointy top, like a pyramid on the top. And he said, "What do you think that is?" I said, "Well, it looks like a stove to me." He said, "It does a bit, doesn't it?" He said, "Well, it's cost us 4 million to buy." I said, "What?" He said, "It's a maser." Now, a maser apparently is the most accurate clock in the world, or certainly one that you can acquire. And they need it because they're measuring the speed of pulses that are coming from pulsars and quasars and the like out there. And they've been relying upon the radio time that comes from, where is it, that you get on your telephone, basically, the talking clock, if you like. But it comes by radio. And if you've got a radio clock at home, it's coming from there. But unfortunately, as light travels at 186,000 miles per second, by the time it gets from there to there, they're miles out with their timing. We're timing it billionths of a second. So it wasn't accurate, so they had to buy their own in there. So he said to me, "Why do you think it's got a pointed top?" I said, "No idea." Something to do with radio? No, he said, "To stop anybody putting a cup of tea on it." Seriously. There you are. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being a wonderful audience. And I will take a quick question if I don't get thrown out. But we've got to be easy. Thank you. Good question. Good question. I've dropped a bit on the